registered a bit late or struggled in some way to get going in the beginning. And I think just for tonight, we'll do a overview of what the whole module is about and give you the big picture view. And then next week, we'll do a deep dive into those first 3 learning units that will get you caught up and hopefully feeling comfortable and confident to continue with the rest of the module with your lecturers. All right, so BMNG 5121. This is the first half, so you will do part B in second semester. And this module really introduces you to the fields of business management. So we look at that fast-growing and competitive context in which businesses operate today. And we look at the purpose of business in society. So it really is a foundational model. And especially if you're doing a commerce-related degree, it's going to be one that hopefully will set you up for success in your other modules and in future years as well. So my name is Paula Hall, and I'm very happy to take any questions, and especially in our second week, I encourage you to join because we will be doing some live interactive work and really help you to understand and apply. Right, so the purpose of this module, you can see from the module outline, is to give you that broad introduction. So I think the important thing there is it is very broad. So we touch on a lot of different aspects of business management. And then you might find that in second year or even in second semester, you get into a bit more depth into some of the aspects that we cover this semester. And then you can see the second point there is to give a basic understanding of management activities and those that are required as a manager to both establish and continue with a successful business. We've also got 4 major outcomes, so you'll find that by the time you finish the semester, you should be able to work through these aspects. So first of all, number 1, demonstrating knowledge and understanding of the concept. So quite a lot of definitions and concepts and principles to try and understand. And then the second one, applying the knowledge of management activities. So you'll see in your assessments very much application-based. So it's important to not only understand and study these concepts, but also be able to apply them to real-world situations. So every time you come across a new concept, I encourage you to think maybe of a business that you know something about, maybe you've worked in before, maybe you've got family, or maybe you're just interested in going into that as a career and apply it to all of the concepts that you're studying. The third one is to look at the impacts that business environments have on the various roles in the business, and this will get you to get a really good foundation for next semester when you go into each of the specific business functions and roles in more detail. And then lastly, it does include corporate social responsibility. So this semester we actually have a whole study unit on that, but then it's also brought into other chapters, and in fact right into study unit 1, which is chapter 1 in your textbook. All right, so the module outline, that's a document that you can get from student material, and it does give you a lot of the information that I'm sort of summarizing for you now, and that's structured to pace you through the textbook. So you're going to do half of the textbook, or up to chapter 10 in Business Management 1A, and then you complete in semester 2 in Business Management 1B. So go through that because it does pace you quite nicely, and then you'll also get an idea, since you have started a bit late, of where you need to be to try and catch up. ARC, hopefully you've got access to ARC now, your online learning management system, and that also works according to your module outline, and you'll see there some excellent additional resources, some questions that you can use either as a checklist or to prompt you to think on your own. Then you can go and seek in your textbook and through your study notes and in lectures, you can ask questions that will help you to answer those. So it's very much designed to construct your learning, because that's been proven to be a very good way of helping students to remember, as opposed to just reading or listening to things. So do go through that. It's a very nice additional resource. And then there's in there additional links to websites, to videos, and a whole lot of interactive micro assessments and all these additional support that will facilitate your understanding in addition to what you cover in lectures. And of course, your textbook being the most important source for your theory. Okay, so from your module outline, I think it's important right up front just to know where you're going and what you need to do to succeed. So you can see that the exam is 35%. Now that you might be surprised at is actually quite low. And it means that you need to work continually throughout the semester. As you can see, 30% for your test, 25 for your assignment. So combined, your semester formative assessments are going to give you 55%. Then you've got your additional 10% in ICE, which really is something that you should be able to get quite easily, and don't forget about it, because that 10% can make a difference between passing and failing, or between passing and getting a distinction, being 75%. Okay, so not only do you want to have a good semester mark, but it's essential if you want to get a final, well, easily passed module mark as well, and get through to that 50% without any issues. Okay, so there you can see the marks that are involved for each of these, and you've got tests and exams. Those are going to be closed books, so under examinable conditions, invigilated and so on. You need to start studying now. You need to make study notes, you need to have summaries, because you are going to be required to understand that theory and then know that theory, so that when you go into those assessments, you're able to apply it quite easily because the knowledge is there already. All right, and then learning unit 1 to 4 is your test. Learning unit 1 to 6 is going to be your assignment. Okay, so I think just some of the aspects to look at, and I'm just really introducing them to you now to give you the big picture. So learning units 1 and 2 are chapters 1 and 2, and that is looking at the business world for chapter 1, and just understanding how transformation happens, what the resources are, why we've got these unlimited needs and limited resources, and the conflict between that. And there's quite a nice overview given there so you can understand the business world and its place in society. And then learning unit 2, which is chapter 2, is all about entrepreneurship. So we change tack quite frequently in these first 5 learning units, and that, as you can see, entrepreneurship is now going into some specific area, and it's actually written by a different author. Each chapter is in this textbook, and you've got different sources of expertise therefore. So the entrepreneurship chapter is going to show you all about what it is like to be an entrepreneur, the skills, the resources, the types of traits that entrepreneurs need, and it's going to help you understand how you can start a business as an entrepreneur, and of course the significance and importance of entrepreneurship to the economy, and especially from a South African perspective. And then also additional things like what the difference is between a small business and an entrepreneur, and how you could start a business by buying one or having a franchise or creating an opportunity from scratch. So quite an interesting one. Both of those study units we will be doing next week, and we will be looking at the content of them in quite a bit of detail. All right, and then the next 3 and 4, so study unit 3 is chapter 3, and that's going to be look at establishing a business. So some technical aspects to this chapter. Make sure that you, when you go through it, understand what these terms are. It's quite difficult just to learn them if you haven't heard some of the concepts before, so make sure you invest a bit of time in that, and make sure you've found some examples to solidify your understanding there. But it's things like, well, you could start as a self entrepreneur, go to a sole proprietor, or maybe join up with someone else and a couple of other people and form a legal entity of a partnership, closed corporations, which you can still buy even if you can't start them, and then quite a long section on a company, be it private or public, and the various types of companies. For example, you can also have not-for-profit companies. So quite a lot that's involved there. And then we've got 2 additional forms of legal ownership of businesses, which will be a business trust, and also then looking at cooperative societies. That chapter is perhaps a little bit longer too, because then we go into all about business plans and the importance of them and what they're used for, what the components are, and really importantly, who the stakeholders are in a business that you should include in a business plan as well. Then we've got study unit 4, which goes on to the business environment, and quite an interesting chapter, I think, because we look at the macro environment that businesses operate in. So those aspects that we can't really do much about as business people, business owners and managers, and that would include things like what's happening in the economy and the social environment, but certainly those factors do impact the business. Then we've got the market environment, so your suppliers, your customers, your competitors, and so on, and how they also, despite you having a little bit more control, we have to operate within and sometimes don't always have things go the way we want them to go. We need to be aware of that. And then the micro environment, that being the internal immediate environment that a business operates in, and understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, your vision, your mission, your goals, your employees, and looking at all those aspects that you do have control over and that you want to then make sure that those three environments together, you are both working with, trying to maximize your opportunities and your strengths and minimize your threats and your weaknesses. All right, so learning unit 3 then is where we'll go up to the end of next week when we do our session on Thursday, because we will have a stop at the end of that week. You should have covered up to the end of learning unit 3. All right, and by then you should have caught up and you can continue with the learning unit 4 with your lecturer. Okay, but then learning units 5 and 6, or chapters 5 and 6 then. Now this is getting towards the end of what you'd need to do for your assignment. So there's that chapter I was talking about on corporate social responsibility. So really big now, and even small companies are thinking about how they can support, whether it's society, whether it's their own community, the environment, and all the aspects around corporate governance and social responsibility and sustainability. So very interesting stuff there, and I think is becoming more and more relevant. Okay, and then we can almost think of that as being, because it is actually also literally halfway, because it's learning unit 5 or chapter 5 out of chapter 10. But we can look at your textbook and you'll see that it is going to be partitioned at that point into the next section. So learning unit 6 introduces us to the remainder of the book. Okay, so corporate social responsibility then finishes off, as you can hear from what I've explained, from 1 to 5, jumping a little bit all over the place. And now learning unit 6 sets the scene for the remainder of the course, which is more cohesive because each chapter sort of feeds on the next one. Okay, so it's called Introduction to General Management, and there we look at what it's like to be a manager, what the various levels of management are, so from lower to middle to upper management, and the various skills that you need at each of those, and the roles of managers at each of those levels. And we introduce there how you've got the various functional areas, and that being marketing or HR, maybe if you're working already, you might be in IT and you think, well, where does that fit in? So we look at all of those various functional areas as well, and that is what sets you up for the remainder 4 chapters or four different learning units of the module, and that takes us to planning, leading, organizing, and control. All right, so those being 4 different functions of management, it's introduced, and then that will take you through 1 chapter for each of those. So we look first of all at planning, so right from high-level top management, strategic planning, to the tactical planning of middle management, to the lower management, looking at our operational goals or our operational managers. And if you take all of those aspects together, you will look at the various plans and goals, and we look at SMART goals and really go through in quite a lot of detail all of the aspects that would be involved from a planning perspective, that irrespective of your role as a manager, you would need to start off the managerial process with. Then that leads us into organizing. So how is the business organized? So do we have different departments? Is it organized according to customer or according to business function? So, the marketing department, the finance department, and so on. And if you've planned well, then you're organizing, you should be able to work out the various roles and know how you're going to set the business up for success through clever organization. And it also looks at that other various options in there. So, how you can enrich and enlarge jobs and specialization and all of those things. That then leads us on to leading. And leading is going to be taking, now that you've got that organization in place, how does leadership actually work? So how do you influence employees? And there's quite a lot of theory in this chapter. So as you go through leading, you go through the sort of older kind of theories right up to the modern theories in terms of what makes a good leader. You also look at the difference between leaders and managers, because it's not always the same thing, and various named theories from different people who have done research on these, and they've all add a bit to the body of knowledge, and some of them may even conflict, but you do need to know that. And that chapter, I think, explains a lot about how leading actually works through things like power and trust and the various people who work and according to those types of leadership. And again, this is where you must always think of examples of people who fulfill those different roles that they're trying to explain. It'll just help you try and understand that and learn that. Okay, and then we've got the final chapter of the semester and of this module, and that is control. And it almost ties the loop up, because if you've planned well, you should be able to figure out via the control process how close you came to achieving those plans and those goals. And then maybe you need to adjust the planning, and you basically start again. But here includes things like quality control, but all elements that a manager has to consider of what the steps are in control, what control process is all about. And I think it leads you up to the end of part 2 of the textbook. So it closes the loop nicely. And at that point, you'll be sitting down in your exam and learning about that. Okay, so next week, this is where I'm going to start with the Learning Unit 1. We're going to do a deep dive into that, and we're going to put our thinking hats on, bring your textbooks, and bring your phones, because you'll be using that as well to answer some questions, draw some diagrams, and so on. So I look forward to seeing you then, and I wish you a very happy rest of your week, and just be confident in the knowledge that you will catch up. So don't stress about it. You've got time, and you can easily be successful. Thank you so much.